Hello and welcome to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Today we've got a couple of things to discuss, including a few signings, a couple of injury updates with a handful of teams, and some trade rumors involving the St. Louis Blues, the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Arizona Coyotes. We'll get to all of that coming up right now. Hello and welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday break and had a great start to the new year. Well, happy 2023 to everyone. I hope everyone's had a really good start to the season this year. We are now in 2023 and we are only 2 months away from the trade deadline, so we're going to have a lot more of rumors and speculations around the possible trades over the next few months. We're probably going to have a lot of speculation over the next month, and then starting early February we're probably going to have a lot of possible trades before the trade deadline. So definitely going to be interesting to see who gets moved and what happens before the trade deadline. There's still a lot of things to shake out when it comes to the playoff races as well, so definitely going to be interesting to see how all this shakes out. But I'll start today with a few signings that have happened. I'll start with the entry-level contracts. First, in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Flyers have signed right-shot defenseman Ethan Samson to a 3-year entry-level contract that will have an average annual value of $876,000. Now, Samson has done a really good job in the WHL so far this year, and he's done a really good job last year. He was a 2021 6th-round pick of the Philadelphia Flyers. Samson had a really good season last year, putting up 15 goals and 43 points in 68 games as a defenseman, so he did pretty good last year. This year he's done better. He's gotten 11 goals and 27 points in 38 games. So it looks like he's already on pace to hit more points than he did last year, which is really good for the Flyers. He's probably still going to need a couple of seasons in juniors, probably going to need another 1 or 2 years in the WHL, and then another 1 or 2 years in the AHL before he contends for a roster spot. But I think in time he could be a good second pair of defenseman for the Flyers. The Flyers are going down what seems to be the road of a rebuild, so they're probably going to move out some players. So I think in time, Samson could be a good third pair of defenseman for the Flyers. He's probably still going to need some more time to grow and develop as a good player, but in time he'll probably contend for a spot. I think getting him signed to an entry-level contract is the start of that, so good for the Flyers to get him locked up. Over in Winnipeg, Danny Chychrun has signed his 3-year entry-level contract with the Winnipeg Jets. That has an average annual value of $860,000. Now, Chychrun was a 3rd-round pick in last year's draft, the 2022 draft, and was a really good pickup for the Winnipeg Jets. Now, Chychrun looks like he could be a good third-line center for the foreseeable future for the Winnipeg Jets. Chychrun had 23 goals and 55 points in 66 games last year, which was a pretty good season for him, and he was able to be a pretty high draft selection in last year's draft. But he's done even better this year, putting up 12 goals and 26 points in 55 games in the OHL. So he looks like he's going to be a really good piece for the Winnipeg Jets for the foreseeable future. I think that in time could be a good third-line center, maybe a second-line center for the Jets. The Jets have a lot of questions in the center group right now, with guys like Scheifele and Dubois possibly being moved on in the next year or two. So Chychrun's probably going to need another year in juniors, and then a year or two in the AHL. But I think in time he could be a good second-line center for the Winnipeg Jets. He looks like he's going to be a good piece for the Winnipeg Jets on the forward group. So getting him signed to a 3-year entry-level contract is a good start to that, and hopefully Chychrun can continue to play really well in the OHL. And hopefully that'll transfer to the pro game where he can continue to grow and hopefully eventually get to the NHL to play with the Jets. Now, the bigger signing that has happened over the past little while would be that Joe Pavelski has re-upped with the Dallas Stars, as he has signed a 1-year, $3.5 million deal to continue to play with the Dallas Stars. Now, I know a few years ago, Pavelski was a big player for the San Jose Sharks, was a really good team player, was a longtime Shark, and he was not brought back by San Jose and went to free agency and signed a 3-year deal with the Stars. And since signing that 3-year deal, he has done phenomenally with the Stars. He has been a part of the Pavelski, Hintz, and Robertson line, which has been one of the best lines in the NHL, and his point totals have been outstanding. Going into this season, he had 66 goals and 163 points in 205 games over his 3 seasons with Dallas. Now, he had signed a 1-year deal in March last year with the Stars to remain with Dallas. That contract is in effect right now, and then since January 1st hit, which is when all players who signed 1-year deals in the past year could sign extensions, now he's signed another 1-year deal. So it seems like Pavelski may be like Spezza, where he just signs 1-year deals until he retires. So it does seem like Pavelski could continue to do that. He's a really good player. He's gelled really well with the other two guys on that top line. Now, he's also taken a little bit of a pay cut each time he signed. His first initial contract on that 3-year deal was $7 million. After his 3-year deal was done, he signed a 1-year, $5 million deal with a little bit of signing bonuses into his contract. And this next contract, which will start at the beginning of next year, is only a $3.5 million contract that has a few signing bonuses in there. So definitely think that Pavelski is really going to live up to those sorts of contracts. He's shown he can be a really good offensive weapon. He had 27 goals and 81 points in 82 games last year, and he already has 12 goals and 37 points in 38 games this year. So he's hovering right around the point per game pace, and he looks like a really, really stellar top 6 forward for the Dallas Stars. So definitely good to lock him up for another year, and hopefully Pavelski can continue to be a really good top 6 winger with Robinson and Hintz for foreseeable future. Now over to the injury updates of the video. We'll start with the Anaheim Ducks, as they were able to get 2 goalies back off of injury reserve. Now, before the Christmas break happened, the Ducks started to get injured on the goaltending front. First it was Stolarz, who went down and was placed on injury reserve, and then Gibson was taken out of the lineup due to an injury. But since then, Gibson has come back, and now Stolarz has been activated off of injury reserve, and both goalies were back. So they had to run their goaltending tandem with Lucas Dostal and Olli Eriksson, which I don't think is too bad. Dostal looks like the goalie of the future, and is probably going to be a backup next year. But definitely getting some more AHL time is probably good for his development, and I think Eriksson probably still needs a couple more years in the AHL. So getting Gibson and Stolarz back will allow them to move Dostal and Eriksson now back to the minors, and hopefully help Dostal and Eriksson continue to develop in the AHL. Meanwhile, for the Ducks, getting Stolarz and Gibson back is huge. They're not going to be a playoff team this year, so getting them back is not really going to help them much in a playoff push. But getting Gibson back is huge. He's their starting goaltender right now. Getting him back was pretty big for them. As for Stolarz, he's their backup, and he's in the final year of his deal, and with the Ducks being sellers most likely at the deadline, he could be a trade chip for them. So I definitely think that he could go to a team who has a weak goaltending depth, but definitely think that getting Stolarz back to showcase him for the next month or two before the deadline, just in case they do end up trading him, is a good idea for the Ducks. So getting Stolarz and Gibson back is good, and hopefully they can help the Ducks win some games, as they really haven't won a lot this year. And hopefully with Gibson and Stolarz back, they can surprise a few teams and win a couple of games. Next, over with the New York Islanders, they have both good and bad news on the injury front. Now, they were able to activate Semyon Varlamov off of injury reserve, and he should be getting back into game action in the next game or two. Varlamov is a really good backup goaltender, and with him out, Sorokin had to hold down the fort for a little bit. Varlamov hasn't been out for too long. It's only been a couple of weeks, but Sorokin has gone into the majority of the games over that time frame. So definitely getting Varlamov back is going to take some of the pressure off of a guy like Sorokin, and should be able to help this team continue to push for a playoff spot. But the bad news was that young forwards Oliver Wahlstrom and Simon Holmstrom are both day-to-day right now with injuries, and they're going to miss the foreseeable future. Now, Holmstrom was only called up a couple of weeks ago, but he has really shown that he can be a good top 9 forward for the Islanders. He looks like he's a really good forward, and he looks like he has a really good future with the organization. He's going to be out right now day-to-day. He's not going to miss too much time. I think he should be able to get back in the very near future. But placing him in injury reserve and him being out day-to-day, not an ideal situation for the Islanders, especially with a couple of other forwards out. So losing him is not an ideal situation. Over with Wahlstrom, he's shown here that he can be a really stellar top 6 forward, and has worked really well with a guy like Barzal. So losing him for the foreseeable future, not good. He's going to be out for an indefinite period of time, so it's really hard to pinpoint when he could be back. But definitely not a good situation, losing Wahlstrom and Holmstrom, who have definitely both shown they can be good top 9 forwards this year. Wahlstrom has shown he can be definitely a good scoring top 6 forward. So losing Wahlstrom and Holmstrom is going to be difficult for the Islanders, and getting Varlamov back will take a little bit of the weight off Sorokin. So hopefully Varlamov can continue to help the Islanders in their playoff race, as they're in a dogfight for a playoff race with guys like the Rangers, Penguins, and Capitals. And hopefully Wahlstrom and Holmstrom can continue to improve and get healthier, and make it a return to the lineup in the not-too-distant future. Over in St. Louis, the Blues had a whole bunch of injuries, and they are a really banged-up team right now. So to start with, the St. Louis Blues placed Torrey Krug on long-term injury reserve, as he's going to miss the next 6 weeks with a lower body injury. So that's not good for the Blues. They already have a banged-up D-core with guys like Scandella and Peronovich out due to injuries. So losing another guy like Torrey Krug is not going to be an ideal situation for the Blues. He's a good top four defenseman. He has played sometimes in the third pair, but he's been mostly a second pair defenseman for the season, and he's done quite well. Krug hasn't been the player he was in Boston, that top-end defenseman, so if he can get back to the way he was playing in Boston, he should be a really good top four defenseman for the Blues, but losing him for the next month and a half, not a good situation for the Blues, and they're already depleted on the blue line, so losing another guy is not going to be a good situation for them. As for the other injuries, they were all in the forward group, as forward Logan Brown, O'Reilly, and Vladimir Tarasenko were all going to miss some time. Now, Brown has suffered an upper body injury and is going to be out for an unknown period of time. He hasn't been placed in injury reserve yet, but it's quite possible he could be in the near future. Brown has been in and out of the lineup due to an injury, and he's a good bottom six forward, so losing him for the next few games is not going to be an ideal situation for them, especially with guys like O'Reilly and Tarasenko out. And he could have easily probably gone to the top 9, so definitely big blow for Brown to continue to be injured throughout this season. O'Reilly and Tarasenko are both going to be out for a huge amount of time. Tarasenko's going to be out for about a month with a hand injury, and O'Reilly's going to be out for about 6 weeks with a foot injury. So bad news for both of these two. These two are probably the best trade chips for the St. Louis Blues, and with them on the outside looking in right now, they could be sellers at the deadline. So getting those two back in the lineup before the deadline to try and showcase them would be important for the Blues. I think Tarasenko should be able to get back well before the deadline. He should be back probably around early February, maybe in late January if things go really well. But definitely think that Tarasenko could be back in the next month. Riley's probably going to be out until mid to late February as well, just like Krug. So having him out with only like a week or two until a deadline is not going to be good for the Blues. They're going to have a short time to showcase him. So bad injuries for the Blues. Two key forwards, a key defender, and a good bottom six forward all out right now for the St. Louis Blues. So definitely think that the Blues losing these key pieces are going to be hard on them. They're all currently 500 right now, so they're not doing too bad, but they are on the outside looking for a playoff position. So not looking good for the Blues right now, and these injuries are not going to help their case at all. Over in Ottawa, they were able to have a couple of activations over the past few weeks. We talked about in the last video how the Senators were banged up going into the holiday break with guys like Stützle and Mott out. But Stützle and Mott have both been activated off of injury reserve and had gone to game action just after the Christmas break. And they've gotten a few healthy bodies off of the defensive end, as Jacob Bernard-Docker, Artem Zub, and Eric Brandstrom have all been activated off injury reserve. Now, Bernard-Docker was activated, played a few games, and has since been sent down to the minors. So with Brandstrom being activated now, I don't think that's too much of a surprise. And I don't expect Bernard-Docker to probably end the season in the minors. I definitely think that if they run into another injury or two, or if a player like a Holden or a Brandstrom aren't playing too well, Bernard-Docker could easily come up. He looks like he could be a good top four defenseman in the future. Probably a good third pair defenseman right now, but definitely think that he's a really good defender, so getting him back is good. And I expect him to probably be called up in the future. And then Brandstrom and Zub getting back is good. Brandstrom hasn't gone to game action yet, but I expect in the next game or two he should be able to get back into the lineup. He's a good third pair defenseman, and he showed it this year. And he's shown that he can be a good player for the Senators. So getting him back is a really good scenario for the Senators, and hopefully he can continue to help the Sens. As for Zub, getting him back is good. He just recently signed an extension, and he's a key stabilizing piece in that top four. So getting Zub, Brandstrom, Bernard-Docker back is going to help that Sens defense immensely. And with the Sens having clawed their way back up to a 500 record, they have been playing really well as of late, and those three defensemen getting back are going to be a huge boost to their defensive game. So hopefully those three can get back and be good, and hopefully the Sens can continue to climb their way maybe back into the playoff race. And lastly, with the Avalanches, they have both good and bad news. Now the Avalanche were getting a little bit more healthier. Towards the holiday break, they were starting to get a little bit healthier, and they have continued to do that. They have activated Nathan MacKinnon off injury reserve. They've activated Darren Helm off of long-term injury reserve, and they have gone back Martin Kaut. Now, McKinnon was placed in injured reserve just before the holiday break. Getting him back is huge. He's their top-line center. He's a big piece of the Avalanche forward group, so getting him back into the lineup is a big win for the Avalanche, and hopefully he can continue to help produce offensively. Getting Helm back is huge. Helm is a good bomb six forward who had not played at all this year. He had been on the long-term injury reserve for the entire season, so getting him back is a big win for the Avalanche. Helm showed last year that he can be a really good bomb six forward for the Avalanche, and a really good depth player who can score key goals. So definitely getting Helm back is huge. And while Kaut hasn't found his spots, getting another healthy body back is good. He can play a fourth or third line role right now, and hopefully he can find a concrete spot in the Avalanche's lineup, which he hasn't found yet. So getting all these guys back is huge. They did get a couple more injuries, though, as Pavel Francouz has been placed in injury reserve and is day-to-day with a lower body injury. Francouz and Georgiev have been a really good tandem this year, a good 1A, 1B sort of tandem for the Avalanche. And now with Francouz out, a lot of the pressure is on Georgiev. Georgiev is definitely going to have to run with the starting role for now. I think Jonas Johansson, who's been called up to be the backup, is an okay backup, but probably won't get into much NHL action. So I think that a lot of pressure is on Georgiev right now, and hopefully he can continue to be a good starting goaltender for the Avalanche for the next few games while Francouz is on injury reserve. And Evan Rodriguez is also day-to-day with the upper body injury. He's going to miss the next few games due to an injury. So Rodriguez being out is not an ideal situation for them. Rodriguez has been a really good forward for the Avalanche, good top six forward, and has really stepped up, especially when guys like McKinnon were injured. So losing him for the next few games is not too good, but getting Helm, Couch, and McKinnon back will definitely offset the Rodriguez injury. So getting a couple of key guys back will help this Avalanche team. They're currently on the outside looking in with the playoff picture, but with some of these key guys coming back and them being the defending Stanley Cup champs, they're going to be a dangerous team to watch when they get fully healthy again. So definitely good to see all these guys getting healthy. And that's all I want to talk about for the injury updates. Now let's go over to the trade rumor part of the video. We'll start with the Chicago Blackhawks, as on the most recent 32 Thoughts segment on Hockey Night in Canada, Jeff Merrick said that Max Domi may not end up being traded at the trade line by the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, Domi signed a one-year, $3 million deal with the Blackhawks to sort of up his game in Chicago, a team who probably wasn't going to be doing very well, play a more bigger role than he was in other organizations, show that he's a really good forward, and then be shipped off at the deadline to a contending team. But he's actually found a home in Chicago. He's done really well with the Blackhawks. His point totals have done really well. He has 11 goals and 24 points in 36 games. He's already tied his goal total from last year. He's looking like a really good top six forward for the Chicago Blackhawks. And it seems like it could end up being a good trade chip. But with Domi having a lot of fun playing in Chicago, he's really done well in Chicago. But not only that, Chicago's more like a home to him now. So it seems like it's taken a real fondness of Chicago. And it looks like it may end up being more that the Chicago Blackhawks wind up keeping him. Now, the Blackhawks are going to probably move guys like Taves and Kane before the deadline, maybe even Andreas Athanasiou, and they're going to need some players to play on the Blackhawks team for the next few years while they continue to do the rebuild. And Domi could be a good guy to do that. Domi's a really good player. He's shown it this year. He can be a really good veteran presence on the team for a lot of the younger guys, like a Lucas Reichel, who could come up in the next few years. And I think there are a lot of benefits to signing Domi for a year or two and having him stay with the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, will they do that? I'm not sure. The Blackhawks may think that trading him and getting some picks and prospects may be better than trying to sign him to an extension. So it's quite possible that Domi still winds up being moved by the Chicago Blackhawks. But in my opinion, signing him will not be all too bad. I think Domi's shown this year that he's a really good forward. He can be a really good veteran presence for that Blackhawks team. Probably only be for like a year or two, so it wouldn't be too much, and they could trade him again in a year or two when they're getting out of the rebuild. But definitely think that a Domi extension is a possibility for the Blackhawks and Domi, and I definitely think that Domi is not a guarantee to be moved by a deadline, and this is a situation that we should definitely be keeping our eye on. Over in St. Louis, there have been a few recent reports that while O'Reilly and Tarasenko have gotten much of the attention as possible trade chips for the Blues if they were to end up being sellers, there are a couple of other players who could end up being moved who are in the final year of their deals, and that is middle six forward Ivan Barbashev and third pair defenseman Niko Mikkola. Now for Barbashev, he has been a really good second, third line center/winger for the St. Louis Blues. He has done quite fantastic. He was a really key piece in their cup win a few years ago when St. Louis Blues won the cup. But he also had an amazing season last year. He was able to put up 26 goals and 60 points in 81 games, which is a career high for him. And given the fact he had not hit 30 points in any of his previous years, that was a huge stepping stone for Barbashev. Now, he's not going to get the same amount of points he did last year. He's taken a little bit of a step back. He hasn't had as much of a prominent role with the Blues this year, and he's definitely taken a step back point production-wise, only having 5 goals and 16 points right now in 37 games. But it definitely does seem like Barbashev is a really good forward for the St. Louis Blues and would definitely be a hot commodity come trade line. He only has this year on his contract at $2.25 million, so it's not too bad of a contract. And for a team who's looking for a third-line scoring forward who could use a guy like Barbashev, he could end up being a good trade chip. I think it would take like a third-round pick and mid-level prospect to maybe make a trade for Barbashev. I don't think it'll be too expensive, so if a team misses out on a guy like a Tarasenko, for instance, or a Horvat, or a Brock Besser or something like that, maybe Barbashev's like a plan B for some of these teams. So definitely think Barbashev's the guy to keep our eye on leading up to the trade deadline, as Barbashev could easily be a hot commodity come trade deadline. And the other guy is Mikkola. Now, Mikkola had a pretty good season last year, putting up 3 goals and 13 points in 54 games, and he hasn't done as good this year, only having 2 assists in 36 games. So he has taken a little bit of a step back this year, but the Blues haven't been the best this year, so it's probably safe to say that Mikkola could still probably hit 10 to 15 points on a good team. And I think that Mikkola could easily be a good trade deadline acquisition for a contending team. I mean, he wouldn't cost much. It would only be like a 4th or 5th round pick to probably get Mikkola from St. Louis. And Mikkola, while he's a good third-pair defenseman on St. Louis with a couple of injuries, he'll probably be a 7th, 8th defenseman on most NHL teams, especially a contending one. But if there were a couple of injuries or there was a little bit of a weaker blue line, then Mikkola could easily be a third-line defenseman who could be a really good physical presence on the back end. So definitely keep an eye on Mikkola and Barbashev. These two guys don't have much of a cap hit, and these two are both on expiring deals. So definitely think that Barbashev and Mikkola could both end up being traded by the deadline, and these guys may even be more likely to be moved than O'Reilly or Tarasenko. So definitely 2 guys to keep an eye on. And lastly, with the Arizona Coyotes, there have been a lot of talk recently that the reason that a Jacob Chychrun deal has not been done yet is because of the Yotes asking price. Now, we know that leading up to the trade deadline last year, over the offseason and the early part of this year, the Chychrun trade has been really held up due to his injury, and he has come back off of injury a month and a half ago, and he has really looked good ever since coming back off of injury. He has 4 goals and 17 points in 19 games, and he's only 4 points off of his point total from last year in 47 games. So he looks like he's a really good player. This is sort of the Chychrun we saw in the shortened season. When he scored 18 goals, it's definitely looking like Chychrun is still showing he's a good top-end defenseman for a team. And for a team who's looking to try and acquire him, I think he would be a really good addition. But the problem that a lot of teams are having is that the Yotes not only want a first-round pick, but they also want either another first-round pick or a very elite-level prospect. And it sounds like a lot of teams are not really willing to part with that right now for Chychrun. I mean, a lot of teams would probably be willing to maybe do like a first-round pick, a second-round pick, a mid to high-level prospect, not their best prospects, but a pretty decent one, and maybe another contract to make the cap work. I think that's what a lot of teams probably would want to do right now. So maybe like a first-round pick, a pretty good prospect, and then a second-round pick or another mid-level prospect in the player. But the Yotes really do want a first-round pick and either another first-round pick or a very elite-level prospect. And a lot of teams don't really want to be doing that, don't want to be giving up so much assets to try and get Chychrun. Now, one of 2 things is probably going to happen. Either the Yotes are going to lower the asking price towards the deadline, because Chychrun does have a really good contract, but it's only for the rest of this year and 2 more seasons. So if the Yotes wait a little bit longer, it might make it a little bit harder to get that asking price, because there'll be less term on that contract and it won't be for as long. So definitely think that the Yotes could end up just taking the offer down a bit and maybe making it a little bit more palatable for other teams to try and acquire him. But I also think that there could also be a few teams out there who really needed Chychrun, and they say that they're okay with moving that type of an asking price, and they just wind up giving Arizona what they want. So it'll be definitely interesting to see what Arizona gets for Chychrun, and if Chychrun is moved in the next month or 2, I definitely think it's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on, and I definitely think that Chychrun is going to be an interesting piece for the Arizona Coyotes moving forward. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. Remember to like this video and subscribe. I also do a blog, which I will leave a link to in the description below, so check that out. And I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.